Hey, there's always something I forgot, so I was thinking to call this one the misogyny of herpes dude non-consensual wrestling and tussling. The euphemisms that are used, I've even heard it. I read an article recently that groping is a euphemism because a grope is an assault. That's important because grope maybe sounds more friendly than assault. So even some of the terminology I use may benefit my attacker, right? But in terms of his misogyny, probably mentioned it in one of like Herpes Dude 6 or one of the later parts of the 4-part series that he had said that he was using the radio station to broadcast welfare mothers make better lovers to this girl he has this tormented thing with where she kicked him out and became suicidal and all of this. I'm terrified he's abusing her. But using the radio station to broadcast that kind of offensive message when it was clearly directed to her and she was texting him at the time, it just was like so sinister. He used this system in the interview with the female investigator from Adult Protection where he says, oh, it was kind of like a yellow light situation, which I'm like, what are you talking about? Women are not like traffic lights. And what does everyone do in a yellow light? They speed up before it turns red, right? It's almost like he's betraying himself by his language because he's trying to push against, like, oh, if I can move faster. He's moving fast on me. He says he initiated the tussling and the wrestling. And a tussle is a fight for something. What is the fight for? Sexual access and contact. His proposition for oral sex came later. It was like the secondary assault, which I haven't even really fully debriefed on. He pinned me on a wall. He's a multi-assailant. He pinned me on a wall and is trying to like nuzzle his face on my neck. And he's telling me, I'm just going to go home and masturbate. Because at that point, he's like getting it. I'm not into him. I'm very standoffish. I've told him, don't get out of control like you did. I think at that point, I'm trying to gauge what kind of threat he is in terms of like long-term stalking, long-term harassment. Has he diffused? What I noticed is after the July 1st, 2017 assault, he really like was so backed off. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. So he's not going to be like my everyday banging down my door kind of stalker. What kind of dude is he? And so when I'm like trying to get a grip on what kind of freak he is, as I'm got all my options on how to get out of Astoria, I felt so at this point, he was just, his lines were throwaway lines. Like, he knew he's not getting anywhere with me. He was not as delusional. Like, the first night, he was extremely delusional and arrogant and presumptuous. He had accepted his fate as not being material of, like, the kind of guy I would deal with voluntarily. Yeah, like, oh, yeah, you saw me. So now I'm, like, trying to gather, like, what I was weighing is, like, okay, we have this friendship where we talk about all this politics stuff, and then you have this relationship where you want to assault me. And am I supposed to like completely lose that previous connection, or am I supposed to forgive you? Like, we forgive our friends for doing stupid stuff sometimes. Misogyny wise, oh, like Mary Blake's like, it's not your fault. Today, like, my major revelation, which, like, July 27th, a year later, is like, it's a mandatory reporter thing. I am not specifically, under a contract that says I'm a mandatory reporter, like a social worker, a nursery worker, a Meals on Wheels worker. But in my mind and in my heart, like my Hippocratic oath, my internal sense of ethics, I am a mandatory reporter. So I had no choice but to report what he did to me and to try to protect other victims. The fact that the system, the crony network, his bromances are not doing much. That's another obstacle and another hurdle, but I have to deal with my own conscience. I knew I would pull the string or pull the lever. I knew I would. I know who I am and I know what I'm made of. I knew it immediately. Like, whoa, this is devastating stuff. What I didn't bargain on was how long I could wait. And I think maybe trying to get some kind of... He tried to say in the adult protection interview with the investigator, well, she came and gave me a book. The book of my dad's poetry? Like, look in the face of the father of the daughter you assaulted? Or she tried to get me to come, to the housewarming thing. That was not a housewarming party. That was a confrontation on why you assaulted me. What are we going to do about it? How is this going to affect your job? What level of law enforcement are going to be needed to deal with this? What kind of situation is this? Are you a stalker? That's the first thing is he going to kill you? This is my mom's first question. Good question. That's what people think about when you get violent and you pull violent shit on them. And, okay, like when I was at the city council meeting talking about what he did to me, after this adult protection report came out, which seemed to indicate to me that he's more of a danger to others, to other women, than my gut instinct was telling me, but now he's saying he does this to multiple people, and all of his victim-blaming methodology and the way he tries to blame me for what he did indicates to me he has no understanding of consent whatsoever, or any respect for women whatsoever. The Seaside Chief of Police, Ham, I believe his name is talking about active shooter response. Active shooter response. And I remember thinking, okay, so you volunteered for the Seaside Police a few days after assaulting me. I haven't yet reported you. I've come to your work in September, ready to confront you. Tried to find you on the beach with George, tried to confront you. Okay, now it's October, I'm confronting you with the fact that you're destroying my loved one's sanity with your assault. He knew why I was there. I was there to confront him on the fact that he's hurt immeasurably someone I love. That's why he's looking so dodgy, right? I'm not there to invite him to anything. I'm inviting him to an arbitration over why you assaulted me. So he's trying to say, oh yeah, we were all friends and buddy-buddy. No, you just don't understand me even slightly, what kind of person I am. I was ready for him to apologize to my partner and apologize to me. I was ready for that in October. And I warned his coworker she should have, done the proper steps to be a mandatory reporter. She had to save her own skin and save her own broken heart because he was messing with her too. He was messing with his coworker, which was extremely offensive to me. I saw that 1 year ago. Today, I saw him messing with his coworker. It was like, well, I'm really scared of you, and I'm scared of what you would do to other people additionally. I finally realized, oh, well, he's a misogynist. Oh, and not only can he not capture me or try to capture me, he cannot capture my labor, my servitude, because that's what he's treating women as if they're servants. Oh, would you like to come volunteer? No. I remember the time he told me all his volunteers were free and he's the only one who gets paid. I remember distinctly thinking, oh, what a scumbag, or what a slave driver, what a non-profit creep. Like, I really don't like all of that. I am like an unpaid internship lawsuit kind of Gould and Uten kind of person. Like, I don't dig the whole exploitation of the free labor. So as he's trying to lure me with these like free labor jobs, the traffic light thing was so freaky though, because once I realized, well, you're saying there was a yellow light, so you're saying there was no green light ever for anything. I was scared to let him in my apartment. He begged to come into my apartment. He begged to walk me home. I was scared. But I was checking in with him like, just a cup of tea and like that's it. We're cool. And then I'm still feeling like I'm always taking a risk. And then I console myself with like, okay, I'm gonna confront him about Brenda. I thought he was like kind of gay when he had this like, oh, the way he acted about Brenda. And I'm like, wow, okay, this guy is like really clueless about dating or women. So I'm just gonna help him. I thought I was gonna help him sort out his problems. But I became his next target. And the whole like failure for with all this like I initiated tussling, there was no green light. When he says there was a yellow light, he is saying there is no green light. He is admitting non-consensual wrestling, non-consensual tussling. Ugh. It's devastating and it's humiliating. I'm particularly grossed out that I let him use the restroom. Isn't that funny? It's like I think I must have made like at least two huge mugs of tea, or maybe I drank more tea than he did. I was putting maple syrup in probably green tea, like Celestial Seasonings green tea, and I think he was more caffeine sensitive than I am, and it was causing him to stay up too long. I remember distinctly thinking, are you just staying too late to be rude? Like, why would you stay this late? And I kept like looking at my watch or the time and like being like, why are you staying so long? And then he tries to use his like, well, it lasted forever. I just stayed at her place as long as I possibly could, as some like indication of like, oh yeah, then it was consensual when I assaulted her. And it's like, you are mischaracterizing things. And I finally realized, oh, he was staying as long as he possibly could to wear me down and like make me. I mean, I was alert and hypervigilant, as all rape or assault victims will always be. But the thing about assault is you have fight, flight, or freeze. And when are they all going to happen at the same time? Or which one does your body choose? And some of my like kind of like extremely withdrawn limp freezingness mixed with the neurological damage I have from Ben's assault, which includes left side paralysis that overwhelms me, especially when my PTSD is raging, I feel like this limp falling out paralysis because I had such a strong snap of my neck. I believe I had nerve damage. I never felt the same on the left side of my body. And I deal with long-term feelings of the sensation of numbness and weakness there. So is he like interpreting my partial paralysis as consent? And you're supposed to be working with disabled and elders? That's freaky. That is so freaky. And like, I'm not really as strong and badass as I was when I was 25 in terms of fighting. I'm trying to get my physical fitness up. But he's 6'6". I don't know how much he weighs, probably over 200 pounds. He's really tall. He's skinny, but he's not like the skinniest. For him to overwhelm me, he crushed my ribs. My ribs where I had an injury from the last guy who crushed my ribs. He was re-traumatizing injuries that were already there, for which I have victims' compensation for counseling or medical treatment or acupuncture. Like, he's re-traumatizing injuries. God, I freaking probably I need more support. And I thought of him as support. I thought of him as, oh, you're my new big brother. You're like this social worker kind of guy that's going to help me navigate reality, the system, maybe things that lead to real jobs, not just fake volunteer jobs. And he just completely used that like luring his quid pro quo, then to try to swipe all this creepy, sexy stuff at me. And I'm like, oh. So the misogyny, it is so misogynist. And like, kind of like with this Russian spy case thing, the Maria Butina thing, it's like, before he got my arms down, when he pinned me down and pinned my legs, somehow I remember like I somehow accidentally like touched his bald, sweaty head, and I just remember feeling like shivers of horror, so disgusted, and I must have like winced or something like that. And I think that's when he had my like somehow just like completely pinned my arms down. It might be because I don't have a thing against bald men, but I'm just not attracted to this bald man with herpes, who's 6'6", huger than me, and admits to initiating tussling and wrestling with me after telling me about his herpes, and works at a community center full of young girls and elderly in Seaside, Oregon. And but okay, looking on the bright side, he just hit his glass ceiling. If he was going to be promoted to director, if he was going to try to run for mayor, if he was going to try to do anything, boom. Even if he's holding on to his sinecure by the skin of his teeth, like intimidating people, compromising people. He has compromised the board, shown them for fools. He's compromised Skylar Ackerwald. He's compromised Coast Radio. I think Graham might be the smartest one, because Graham's kind of like finally getting it, I think. I just don't even know what to say to him other than for safety, get a sexual assault restraining order if he does this to anyone else. For your safety, you need to know he's admitted to doing this to multiple people now. He's admitted to doing it to me. If you want to live in a good world, maybe go ask the DA and the police to deal with this.